All
So,
right.
so Mayor, if I may, Mr. Chairman, first off, welcome everybody to our HRTPO board meeting. I know this is a difficult day with the rain and the sleet and everything occurring, but appreciate
Yes, can you
everybody
hear me?
joining us. And Mayor Tuck,
All right.
yes, we're able to hear you, sir. Just
Okay.
in time.
Look, I have to apologize, everyone. I was concerned about this happening with my laptop, so I even dialed in earlier on my phone. But I had the meeting information for my. Can you still hear me? 'Cause I
Yes,
just
sir.
lost something. Okay, all right. But anyway, I had the meeting information for the 12:30 meeting, and so that complicated matters. But thank you all for your forbearance. I'd like to ask Mr. Crum to read the announcement for the electronic meeting procedure.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, welcome to our HRTPO board meeting. Pursuant to the declared state of emergency in the Commonwealth of Virginia in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of our board members, the staff, and the general public, today's meeting is being held electronically via the Zoom platform. These electronic meetings are required to complete essential business on behalf of our region. Per the requirements of the Code of Virginia, we posted the meeting notice, agenda, and supporting documentation on our HRTPO website for public review. We also provided electronic copies of today's meeting agenda and supporting documentation to our board members and other interested parties. And as I mentioned, posted that on our website as well. So as a reminder, today's meeting is being live streamed and is available for viewing real time on our Regional Connection YouTube channel. We've been very pleased that members of the public are joining us to watch our meetings as they occur live. The meeting is also being recorded and will be available after the meeting in video form on the HRTPO website. We invited members of our public to submit comments on any items on today's agenda. I can report to you that no public comments, Mr. Chairman, were received as of 48 hours before today's meeting. Before we begin today's meeting, just a few housekeeping reminders. Again, we ask everybody stay on mute until it's your time to provide input. After speaking, please remember to go back on mute. Really important that we all identify ourselves when we speak. And as a reminder, per the Code of Virginia, all votes today must be taken via roll call. Mr. Chairman, Kelly Arledge will be serving that duty today to conduct the roll call of our members. So on behalf of our staff and community, thank you for all you do. Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you, sir.
Super. And I would like to go ahead and do the roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think we could dispense with two items together. If it pleases the chair, we could entertain a motion to approval of the agenda in a second, and then the vote on the approval of the agenda could serve two purposes. One, to approve our agenda, and secondly, taking care of that roll call so we don't have to do that once, sir.
And you are correct. I'm looking at my notes here, and I didn't have it out of order. So if we go ahead and ask for a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
So moved. William Harrell, Hampton Roads Transit.
Thank you, William.
Can you get a second, please?
Second, William McCarty.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask Kelly Arledge to please commence with the roll call.
Chesapeake, Mayor West.
Yes.
Franklin, Mayor Rabel. Gloucester, Mr. Bazzani. Hampton, Mayor Tuck.
Present.
Isle of Wight, Mr. McCarty.
Yes.
James City, Mr. Eisenhower.
Yes.
Newport News, Mayor Price.
Yes.
Norfolk, Mayor Alexander.
Yes.
Poquoson, Mayor Housel. Portsmouth, Mayor Glover.
Yes.
Southampton, Mr. Gillette. Suffolk, Mayor Duman. Mr. Bennett, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm on. I think the mayor, he said he's going to phone in, but not I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Virginia Beach, Mayor Dyer.
Yes.
Williamsburg, Mr. Dent.
Yes.
York, Mr. Shepherd.
Yes.
HRT, Mr. Harrell.
Yes.
WADA, Mr. Trogdon. VDOT, Mr. Hall.
Yes.
DRPT, Mr. Brule. Virginia Port Authority, Ms. Vick. General Assembly, Senator Locke. Senator Spruill. Delegate Heretic. Delegate Ward.
Yes.
That
Kelly, I
concludes
did
roll
see
call.
Kathy Vick on the call earlier. I don't know if her mic is working or not.
Yeah, I said yes.
Thank you. Appreciate
Maybe I
it.
didn't say it loud enough. Thank you.
Mr.
The motion is approved.
All right, great, thank you. I'd like to welcome our new TPO voting alternate member, Councilwoman Lisa Louise Lucas Burke of Portsmouth.
Glad to be
And
here.
now, great. And now I'd like to ask for our director report from Mr. Crum.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Included in your agenda is my monthly activity report where we try to highlight some of the key activities being undertaken by staff. Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do is just touch real quickly on a couple of those items. First, you'll see some information in there related to some regional work, although not directly related to the TPO, but on the PDC work program related to vaccine coordination. You're going to see some letters that were sent to the governor and some correspondence back to the governor. So just wanted to provide that as an FYI, since I know that's on the front of everyone's mind. Secondly, I wanted to bring to your attention in the report that we're really pleased we've had 2 meetings of the Regional Transit Advisory Panel. And you might recall that this panel came out of legislation approved last General Assembly session that created the Hampton Roads Regional Transit Fund that supports HRT's proposed backbone system, something that we're really, really excited about, and was a companion piece of legislation formed to create a group of community stakeholders to provide input towards strengthening transit opportunities in the Hampton Roads region. So that group is about 65 members strong. We've held 2 very good meetings. They are in the process of responding to a survey we provided to them. We are seeing about a 90% survey return rate from our RTAP panel members, which is excellent. I really want to thank William Harrell and his team at HRT, Zach Trogdon and his team at WADA, LJ Hansen and his team from Suffolk Transit, who are really helping us with staffing and coordinating this group. So you'll be hearing more from them, but it's going very well, a very engaged group, and we're very excited about that. And then finally, I wanted to mention that we've been pleased to do some work with the chief administrative officers from our peninsula localities to look at how we can take steps to extend the Capitol Trail that runs 55 miles from Richmond to Williamsburg and bring that down the peninsula to Fort Monroe. The idea is to extend that trail another 60 to 70 miles and someday bring it over the Jamestown Ferry to our south side localities as well. So we've had 2 or 3 very productive meetings with the CAOs on the peninsula. And when we reach certain milestone points, we'll come back and be discussing that with all of you. We also had a very good opportunity to brief mayors and chairs on the peninsula about that proposed project. So you can look forward to that being a future agenda item before this board. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have to report, and I'll turn it back to you, sir.
And thank you. Any questions or discussion on the director's report? Okay. This is something we have not done in a while, but I'd like to ask for a report from our Community Advisory Committee, Ms. Terry Donaher.
Thank you very much, Mayor Tuck. I'll be as brief as possible. We had a meeting a month ago, and during that meeting, in response to some concerns I had, our vice chair had, and some staff members had, we decided to do a kind of a review of Robert's rules, and appropriately enough, Robert Crum gave Robert's rules presentation to our group. And part of this stemmed from the fact that we've moved to a Zoom format, and it does have an impact on participation, I found. So we were a little bit concerned about that. Robert gave an excellent presentation. There were a lot of questions. I think it clarified things for a lot of people who haven't attended very many meetings, perhaps, and were not really aware of how meetings are handled. So that was extremely helpful. And then Kendall Miller gave us a presentation on our bylaws. We've been working under new bylaws for about a year since we took on the PDC responsibilities too. And we needed to review those, and we'll be working on those over the next 2 months to update them and basically clarify some of those details that we were just kind of guessing at when we did the bylaws, our revision of the bylaws a year or so ago. So we're hoping to get those in better order that better meet our needs. We also talked about the legislative package that went to Richmond, and part of our discussion about that and other things was member concerns about what our agenda is. And our agenda is typically based on what is going on in the PDC and the TPO at the board level. But there is some sense for several members that there are things that we should be bringing to your attention, not just responding to things that we're getting from, down, going down as opposed to going up. So rather than just go with what you all are doing, we are going to be doing surveys from our members to see if there are topics. Sometimes they're just local, and it becomes a question of, is it going to be a regional issue? And a perfect example of that is originally when the downtown tunnel from Portsmouth to Norfolk and the Midtown tunnel were done, that whole contract, the assumption was that it was a local problem. I know because I asked all the mayors at a forum, and the only one who said it was anybody's problem was our mayor. And also the HRTPO meetings, it was considered a local problem. That has obviously turned out to be a regional problem. So we do need to be aware of those things that may seem local, but really do have an impact. I know, Mayor Tuck was, for instance, very concerned about the placement of ramps on and off the expanded roadways up to the tunnels. So those things matter, and people need to deal with them. And basically that's it. We'll be working on our bylaws, and I'll be reporting on that next time. Thank you very much.
And thank you. Any questions or discussion for Ms. Donaher? Okay. That brings us to agenda item number 5, public comments. My understanding public comments were invited in advance of the meeting by email or phone. There were no public comments received as of 48 hours before the meeting. And there have since been no public comments received. And no public comments from January as well. So now we're going to move to item number 6. Mr. Crum?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. HRTPO board members, this is an important step related to the preparation of our region's long-range transportation plan. You'll recall that Dale Stith has been providing you updates along the way, including a report at our last board meeting. And Ms. Stith is here today to provide you background information on the direction our long-range transportation plan is. Sorry, we have a call. I'd like to ask to go on mute. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. So Dale will be providing you an update on where we are with the long-range transportation plan, in particular related to developing our list of fiscally constrained projects, which is a very, very important step in this process. So Dale, why don't you go ahead and share a screen and walk our board members through this.
Thank you, Bob.
So good morning, everyone. Slideshow started here. So I'm very excited to be able to present to you today the draft fiscally constrained list of projects for our 2045 long-range transportation plan. And I'd like to start out in the agenda. We did not have this item listed as an action item, but at the end of my presentation, we will be asking the board for a recommended action to initiate the 30-day public review of this draft list of projects. So for the past almost 5 years now, we've been coordinating with regional stakeholders, including your locality staff and the public, to update our long-range transportation plan to the horizon year of 2045. And over the past 5 years, everything that we've been doing in terms of collecting candidate projects, developing a vision, goals, updating our prioritization tool, developing a scenario planning framework, has all been to get to this point and to develop this draft fiscally constrained list of projects. It really is the heart and soul of the long-range transportation plan, because it's these projects that are going to help make our region a better place for our residents. So in terms of documenting our long-range transportation plan process, we have done this through a series of reports. This board has approved 5 to date. And then as part of the draft list of projects, we are currently finishing up 2 additional reports that document the funding plan and a project information guide. So in terms of fiscal constraint for the long-range transportation plan, a fiscal constraint is the demonstration that there is sufficient funding to implement proposed transportation improvements that are identified in the plan. In terms of transportation revenues, what we do is we identify revenues that are reasonably available to our region through the horizon year of 2045. The graphic on the right shows what some of these funding sources are available for our region, which includes the Hampton Roads Regional Transportation Funding Sources, Smart Scale, some federal programs like the Regional Surface Transportation Program, and Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality, to name a few. In terms of project costs, we do express project costs in year of expenditure, and this is so that we can account for inflation. And then the project prioritization scores that this board approved last month, we use those scores as a guide to identify and constrain projects for the plan. The short of it is, when we have our revenue forecast for the long-range transportation plan, this revenue forecast needs to be greater than or equal to the project costs that we identify in the long-range transportation plan. So as I've already stated, the main tool that we use to do fiscal constraint is using our project prioritization tool, which again evaluates all of our candidate projects in terms of project utility, economic vitality, and project viability. And then using these scores, again with our revenue forecast, is how we identify those top projects to fiscally constrain. Our long-range revenue forecast, the majority of this forecast is provided by VDOT and HRTPO. VDOT provided the revenue forecast for Hampton Roads the end of last year. And this revenue forecast has been modified to consider impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic. And then HRTPO took this information from VDOT and expanded on some of the assumptions to factor in some of the debt proceeds, some toll assumptions, debt service, and some financing expenses in terms of the HRTPO long-range revenue forecast. So when we look at what this region can anticipate between the years of 2021 and 2045, this region can expect about $28.5 billion for transportation investments. Now, right off the top, we have to account for maintenance, because we do have to preserve our network system that's already open and on the ground today. That's about 60% that we reserve for maintenance. That leaves us about $11.5 billion to add additional capacity in our region. If we break out that $11.5 billion, there's various funding sources, and some of these funding sources are constrained, can only be used on certain types of projects. This graphic on the right shows that the majority of what we have available for additional capacity is our HRTPO funding assumptions. We also have some smart scale revenues that we can use to constrain projects. The new regional transit fund that Bob had mentioned earlier in his director's report. Working with your technical staff, we did develop guiding principles for fiscal constraint. And I won't read all these today, but this is to show that there is a framework for how we applied fiscal constraint. Again, accounting for maintenance, identifying projects that are under construction or soon will be under construction, making sure that we have a highway transit funding split, and distributing funding across various types of roadways so they're not all focused, for example, on interstates. In terms of our regional priority projects, and these would be projects that can be constrained with our regional funds, like HRTF, we have guidelines for what projects can be eligible for those funding sources, such as providing the most congestion relief for the most number of citizens when it comes to highway projects, also factoring in resolutions that this board has approved. And then for our regional transit, the regional backbone, for the regional transit funds, that those projects are a part of the 757 Express. So to come up with this draft fiscally constrained list of projects, we held several fiscal constraint meetings virtually with your staff. They were literally back to back meetings, each about 2 hours long. So at the end of that, we ended up with the list that is a part of your agenda item. We have 137 projects in all that are multimodal, highway, transit, and active transportation. And of this, we also have some regional studies that we couldn't constrain for construction, but that there's enough interest or need for these projects that we would pursue them as a region in terms of continuing to study them. I'll have some maps later in my presentation to show you some of these projects. In terms of our regional priority projects, we do have our highway regional priority projects. And on this slide, we have some that are committed from our current 2040 long-range transportation plan that are going to automatically roll over into the 2045 long-range transportation plan. And that includes the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel widening, high-rise phase 1 widening that both are under construction, segment 3 of 64 on the peninsula, phase 2 of the 64-264 interchange. And we've also included as a committed project the components of the Hampton Roads Express lanes from Jefferson Avenue to Bowers Hill. As part of the 2045 long-range transportation plan, additional highway regional priority projects that are being recommended include 64 Denby Boulevard interchange, phase 3A of the 64-264 interchange, the 64-464 loop ramps, 264 widening from Witch Duck to Independence, the 264 Independence Boulevard interchange, 664 widening, including Bowers Hill to College Drive, Virginia 168 bypass, and then Virginia 164 widening as well. Now, we recognize that these highway projects will have a blend of funding sources, and we will work with HRTAC to identify which of these priorities will be included in their funding plan. In addition to these highway regional priority projects, we've also identified regional transit priority projects. This would be the Hampton Roads 757 Express, and then regional active transportation priority projects. Bob mentioned the Birthplace of America Trail earlier this morning, and then also the Southampton Roads Trail on the south side. As part of our 2045 long-range transportation plan, we also include some local funding assumptions for the Peninsula High Capacity Transit Project. We do assume some funding from Newport News and Hampton. And then also for the regional landfill or SIPSA flyover interchange project, there's a funding commitment from SIPSA of $5 million. Now you'll notice on the list, there's a lot of projects in Virginia Beach. Historically, the city of Virginia Beach has identified approximately $1 billion in our long-range transportation plans to fund regionally significant projects that are located within their boundary. So the 2045 is no different. The city has also identified almost $1 billion for these regionally significant projects within Virginia Beach. So this map shows our committed interstate regional priority projects that are already under construction. This includes segment 3 of the Peninsula widening. We also have the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. We have the interchange, phase 2, and then the high-rise bridge. And then, as I stated earlier, we've also included parts of the Hampton Roads Express lane from Jefferson to Bowers Hill. This map adds on those additional highway regional priority project recommendations, the Denby Boulevard interchange. And we also have phase 3 of the 64-264 interchange, the 264 widening to Independence, including the Independence Boulevard interchange, 64-464 interchange, Bowers Hill up to College Drive, and then the 164 widening, and then the VA 168 bypass down in Chesapeake. In addition to these interstate projects, we also have many other non-interstate roadway projects across the region. You can see there's up in Gloucester in the light blue here, Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, which is constrained with revenues from the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel Authority. We've got 58 out here in Suffolk. So there's lots of projects that are included on the list that's in your agenda. In terms of transit, we have the Peninsula High Capacity Transit Project that is constrained for construction. And then we also have the dotted lines here show some transit studies to include in our long-range transportation plan. The colors here, the green represents the 757 Express assumptions. And then we've also set aside some funding for expanding and enhancing transit in Suffolk and then in the WADA transit service area. And then finally, for active transportation, again, we have our regional priority active transportation projects. We've got the boat on the peninsula that comes down to the south side, and then the Southampton Roads Trail. And then the orange segments show other regional active transportation projects in Hampton Roads. So in terms of demonstrating fiscal constraint, if we factor in the local assumptions, we have about just over 29.5 billion for transportation improvements. Again, if we take off the assumptions for maintenance, that leaves us with about 12.5 billion for additional capacity. So when we total up all the projects that we're recommending to constrain in the 2045 long-range transportation plan, that is also 12.5 billion. So we have demonstrated fiscal constraint for the 2045 LRTP. So looking ahead, now we would like to start outreach with the public. We've already started outreach with technical committees. The Transportation Technical Advisory Committee received this presentation earlier this month, and they've been reviewing the list. We're also going to be coordinating with the Community Advisory Committee and the Freight Transportation Advisory Committee to get their review and feedback as well. In terms of our 30-day public review, we've created some additional resources to help the public and other interested parties review these projects. Our project information guide includes one-page summaries of all the projects that we're recommending that shows information such as project detail, a summary of benefits, a map so they can see where these projects are located, some cost estimations. And we've also developed an online interactive map for the public to review these projects as well. So looking ahead, we're going to spend the next few weeks under having the public and technical staff review this project. We're coming back to this board at the end of March to approve the funding plan and fiscal constraint. We currently don't have a March board scheduled, and I think Mr. Crum will speak more to this for the need for a March board meeting for this critical approval item. And then looking ahead, we'll start the transportation air quality conformity, working with VDOT and Federal Highway to make sure that these projects don't hurt our air quality in the region, complete the documentation of the 2045, and then finally board approval of the long-range transportation plan in June. So the recommended action for this board today is to initiate the 30-day public review of the draft 2045 long-range transportation plan fiscally constrained list of projects. And that concludes my formal presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Mr. Chairman, it's Tom Shepard.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. Ms. Dith, when you talked a lot about the fiscal constraint aspect of it, and I know many of the board members have in the past have, we've gone through this whole process and we understand how it occurs in your planning. And I commend you and the rest of the folks for the fine work you've done on the plan. I do have a question though concerning the fiscal constraint in terms the HRTAC has identified a $97 million shortfall for the funding of these major projects. And have you taken that into consideration in your fiscal constraint?
Yes, so for the 2045 fiscal constraint assumptions, they're going to be different than what's occurring now for the 2040 because it's a different time horizon. So we did coordinate very closely with VDOT and HRTAC to make sure that all the revenues that we anticipate having between 2021 and 2045 can indeed constrain all the projects that we're recommending.
Okay, I'm not quite following you. I mean, the $100 million shortfall is a $100 million shortfall. I don't understand. The projects haven't. We got $100 million shortfall on the project belt, if you will, through the major regional projects. I don't know how you're taking that into account, even if it's a 2040 or 2045. It's still a shortfall. Now we may have a solution. We may have a solution for it later after the HR TAC meets and some ideas, but at this point we don't.
Mr. Crum?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. Shepherd, thank you for that question. And as Dale said, we've been working closely with HR TAC on this, and I believe we have Mr. Kevin Page on the line. Kevin, could I ask you to respond to Mr. Shepherd's question?
Sure, and thank you, Bob. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure I had my mute right here. Yes, Supervisor Shepherd, who is very active, and we appreciate at HR TAC his membership on the Finance Committee, is aware that there's a $93.13 million gap in funding to complete the Hampton Roads Express Lanes network, which is the entire network from Jefferson Avenue all the way around through HRBT to Bowers Hill, to be completed by the opening of the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel project. So the gap that's been identified and the shortfall is true. There is a gap for us to complete the projects within our 6-year program. Now, as Ms. Stiff just noted to Supervisor Shepherd, that they being the TPO staff, worked very closely with HR TAC to understand that shortfall can be accommodated in the constrained long-range transportation plan, because we would, in essence, to fill the gap if we don't find the funding and identify it, that the project would be fully completed in 2029, which is outside of the HRBT construction window. So our goal at HR TAC is to fully fund the Hampton Roads Express Lanes network and have the entire network open when all of our projects on the 64 corridor are completed. So there is a gap, yes, and Supervisor Shepherd is correct. There is a gap that's been identified. It can be constrained in the long-range transportation plan, because if we don't find the funding at HR TAC, we have to wait 3 additional years for that project revenue to catch up with the project costs. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. Shepherd raises a great question, and Mr. Page, thank you for that for that information to our board. What I would like to stress to our board members is, just like we've done for 5 years and continue to do, Dale and Kevin and all of us between HR TAC, HRTPO, and VDOT District Office really working very closely hand in glove on this to make certain we can deliver you a plan that, as Dale said, meets fiscal constraint, but also is a real plan that identifies those challenges, Mr. Shepherd. So, Mr. Chairman, back to you, sir.
Thank you. What's before us is a motion and a second to authorize the 2045 LRTP draft fiscally constrained list of projects for public comment. So get a motion and a second, please.
William Harrell, HRT, I move for approval.
Mayor Price, second.
Good.
Okay. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Arledge, would you please do the roll call vote? Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had my hand up, but it's kind of hard with Zoom. This is one of the things I talked about. Dale, I may have missed something in explanations over the whole frame of these things, but can you tell me how a locality's ability to contribute to a project may affect the prioritization of that project within the fiscally constrained world. Do you understand what I'm asking?
If just to make sure I do understand your question, are you asking if a locality is able to commit funding towards a project, how does that impact the ability to constrain it?
Yes.
So several ways. In terms of prioritization, that is one of the criteria. Committed funding does factor into the ability to score a project. Projects will receive points with committed funding. In terms of fiscal constraint, if it's a regionally significant project, it must be listed in a long-range transportation plan. So if a locality is willing to fund, say, even 100%, as in the case of Virginia Beach, it's automatically included in our long-range transportation plan because it's a regionally significant project and all the funding has been identified.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay. Ms. Artis, will you do the roll call vote, please?
Chesapeake, Mayor West.
Yes.
Franklin, Mayor Rabel.
Yes.
Gloucester, Mr. Bazzani. Hampton, Mayor Tuck.
Aye.
Isle of Wight, Mr. McCarty.
Aye.
James City, Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Newport News, Mayor Price.
Aye.
Norfolk, Mayor Alexander.
Aye.
Pocosin, Mayor Helsel. Portsmouth, Mayor Glover.
Aye.
Southampton, Mr. Gillette. Suffolk, Mayor Duman. Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Virginia Beach, Mayor Dyer.
Aye.
Williamsburg, Mr. Dent.
Aye.
York, Mr. Shepherd.
Aye.
HRT, Mr. Harrell.
Aye.
WADA, Mr. Trogdon. VDOT, Mr. Hall.
Aye.
DRPT, Ms. DeBrule. Virginia Port Authority, Ms. Vick.
Aye.
General Assembly, Senator Locke. Senator Sproul. Delegate Heretic. Delegate Ward. That concludes the roll call vote.
And thank you.
Mr. Mahaley, does
yeah,
the
Mr.
motion?
Crum?
The motion is approved. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Chairman, our motion passes, sir.
Thank you. Now I'd like to move to item number 7. Would you please introduce that, Mr. Crum?
Yes, I will. Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, if I may ask for some flexibility, I would like to touch on one item that Ms. Stiff alluded to. What your action you just took will do is allow staff to proceed with a 30-day public comment period for our public. As Dale indicated, that leaves us a pretty tight time frame for that to occur, which will get us till the end of March. And then at that point, we have some other procedures that need to happen to evaluate the impact of the projects on air quality, to get that process finalized and be able to queue this up for adoption for you all to meet our deadline. We discussed with our chair and vice chair and wanted to mention to you that we will be calling a special TPO board meeting. And we'll be reaching out to you, but what we realized, and Mr. Chairman, thank you for pointing this out to me, that we have a 5th week in March. And that 5th week we're thinking might be some available time for everybody. It will be a short meeting, it will be a single item, which will be action we'll need from you to take a look at any comments we receive and allow us to move forward with the next step at the LRTP. But Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to give the board members a quick heads up that we will be reaching out to them to review a couple of dates with them for that special meeting, sir.
And Mr. Crum, let me ask you, do we need to talk about approval of that now or just wait in terms of the discussion of it?
I would, we could I wanted to mention that right away on the LRTP part. But sir, I'm fine with you taking that on now since it's sort of related to the long range transportation plan, sir.
Okay, great. Let me look at something here. As Mr. Crum said, there are 5 weeks in the month of March. And one of the things we looked at doing possibly would be either that Monday, the 29th, Tuesday, the 30th, or Wednesday, the 31st. But we looked at possibly Monday, the 29th being perhaps a better date. So just want to find out now if maybe we have discussion or maybe a motion and a second on perhaps March 29th.
Motion made, Bobby Dyer.
Second, Shepherd.
Okay, questions, discussion?
Mr.
All right, Ms. Arliss, would you do a roll? Yes, I'm sorry, Ms. Crum?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, could I ask Mr. Chairman, because we want to schedule that at a time that's most convenient for everybody. With your busy schedules, is a noontime meeting best, or do you like this 10:30 time? We want to do that at a time that's best for everybody.
And I thought about that as well. I thought maybe you could do one of those, is it the doodle poll or something like that, where we can figure out the time?
Absolutely.
Would that work for everyone?
We could get the 29th agreed to, then we can look at a couple of times there. Thank you, sir. That'd be fantastic.
Okay. We'll go for a roll call vote, please.
Chesapeake, Mayor West.
Yes.
Franklin, Mayor Rabel.
Yes, but I'm not available.
Gloucester, Mr. Bazzani. Hampton, Mayor Tuck.
Aye.
Isle of Wight, Mr. McCarty.
Aye.
James City, Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Newport News, Mayor Price.
Aye.
Norfolk, Mayor Alexander.
Aye.
Pocosin, Mayor Helsel. Portsmouth, Mayor Glover.
Aye.
Southampton, Mr. Gillette. Suffolk, Mayor Duman or Mr. Bennett.
Aye.
Virginia Beach, Mayor Dyer.
Aye.
Williamsburg, Mr. Dent.
Aye.
York, Mr. Shepherd.
Aye.
HRT, Mr. Harrell.
Aye.
WADA, Mr. Trogdon. VDOT, Mr. Hall.
Aye.
DRPT, Mr. Brule. Virginia Port Authority, Ms. Vick.
Yes.
General Assembly, Senator Locke, Senator Sproul, Delegate Heretic, Delegate Ward. That concludes the roll call.
Mr. Mahaley, does the motion carry?
Motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
You're on mute.
Okay. I would say thank you, and thank you to each one of you for your willingness to meet on the 29th. Back to you, Mr. Crum, for item number 7.
Yes, so as you just saw from Ms. Stiff, we have some exciting things happening on our regional expressway network that includes widening and improvements starting on the peninsula, coming down through the HRBT, an interconnected managed express lanes network that is running through to Bowers Hill. Of course, this board then said that you really had a broader goal of continuing that express lanes network and improvements heading northward on 664 back towards the Hampton Coliseum as a long-term vision. So naturally, the next phase that's important for us to be thinking of is what happens at Bowers Hill and how does that relate to continued improvements north on 664. One of the projects recommended for the fiscally constrained plan is improvements from Bowers Hill moving northward on 664.
I thought he dropped off.
So,
On because you didn't share it. So that's why I was trying.
could I ask staff to go on mute, please? Thank you. So as we think about Bowers Hill and moving north, we thought it would be a good time to bring our VDOT team in, led by Scott Smizek, who's doing the environmental studies and the analysis of the Bowers Hill interchange. So, Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do is introduce to the board Scott Smizek from VDOT. You've all seen Scott before. And Scott, if you don't mind sharing screen, we'll turn it over to you for our presentation today.
Sure, thank you. Give me a moment here to navigate the screen share.
All right, Scott, looks like it's coming up, okay? We'll let you know when it's displayed. All right, Scott, you're up on the screen.
Great. Glad that worked. So thank you all for the opportunity to come and present and update you on the status of the Bowers Hill Environmental Impact Statement. Our study area has been reviewed a number of times over the last few decades. The two most recent efforts occurred in 2016 as part of the Hampton Roads Crossing Study, SEIS, when this corridor, along with 55 miles of interstate, were analyzed in a NEPA study that resulted in the HRBT expansion project. As part of that study and the action taken by this board, the Bowers Hill interchange was identified as the next priority study to be looked at. And in 2018, VDOT and Federal Highway initiated an environmental assessment, or EA, to look at the Bowers Hill interchange. That study was published and made available for public comment. During the public comment period, the scope of the study was changed to extend northward to College Drive and to also take on considerations of express lanes. So with that information in hand, earlier in spring of 2020, VDOT and Federal Highway initiated discussion on expanding the scope. And this past summer, we initiated what we refer to as pre-NEPA efforts. So we'll get into what that's included. But when we speak of pre-NEPA, an EIS does not officially begin until a notice of intent is issued in the Federal Register. So we expect that to happen this May. In the meantime, we're doing a lot of work collecting data, working with our agencies. Sorry, I'm getting a message that maybe you guys are seeing the wrong screen. Well, we'll just keep going. That better? Yeah. Sorry. So we continue with this pre-NEPA effort until May, when the notice of intent will be issued and an official EIS would begin. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, last summer, we initiated work on this expanded study area and the EIS level work. One of the first steps in August was to update the VDOT study website to inform the public of the change in scope in the study and to kind of put to rest the EA study and open the door for the EIS level analysis. By October of last year, we had initiated field work in the expanded study area, which included access on private property to document natural resources, cultural resources, and just property boundaries. In October of 2020, we conducted a public survey to inform the study's purpose and need. I'll touch on that more in a little bit, but that was one of the first outreach efforts we had on this study. The results of that survey were presented to our group of agencies, and in December of 2020, the federal agencies concurred on the purpose and need for the study, which is a pretty important step in NEPA, and we'll discuss that more in a moment. These monthly coordination meetings with federal, state, and regional entities have been going on since August and will continue throughout the course of the study and kind of serve as the means by which we progress the study. So as I mentioned, we held the public survey to inform the purpose and need. Given the state of the world, that survey was conducted electronically. This slide displays the means by which comments were received, ranging from social media to the website to emails. The nearly 1,300 responses we got to the survey is a record for VDOT at this stage in the study. So we've experienced some great public involvement to date. So I've been speaking about the purpose and need. What you see on the screen is the purpose and need for the Bowers Hill EIS study. The purpose and need sets the goals for the study and serves as the primary criteria for the alternatives screening process. So it's important that we get agency buy-in on this, which we've gotten. And as we begin to discuss the options in the next couple slides, those options will eventually be compared to this purpose and need statement to see if they meet the goals of the study or not. Before I get to talking about the options, we are in the midst of a second public outreach effort to put these options in front of the public and get their input on them. Again, given the state of the world, this is being done virtually. And last week we had a number of new materials that were posted to the website. They include the traditional type style of boards you would see at a regular public meeting. There's also downloadable brochures, frequently asked questions, documents. In place of an actual event on March 15th, we'll post a narrated presentation, which folks can log in at their convenience and view, and we'll accept public comments through March 25th. All of these materials will remain online for the course of the study, but in order to stay on schedule, we will need to close out the public comment period on the 25th. Would encourage everyone to check out the website on your own and to share this with others who may have an interest in viewing the materials or commenting on this part of the study. So I've been talking about the concepts. Here they are. So the yellow highlighted figure on the side of this slide illustrates our expanded study area, which takes the Bowers Hill interchange and all of 664 up to College Drive. It is confined to the interstate, but does account for the interchanges that occur along this stretch. At this stage of study, we're not attempting to say this is the alternative, and we're not attempting to say these are the only alternatives that will advance. We're kind of trying to lay out all the available options that we could even consider. And in the coming months, with public input and discussion with the agencies, we'll narrow down these options to those that will advance through study. So along 664, our options include adding one general purpose lane. Another option would add 2 general purpose lanes. A third option would add an express lane and a drivable shoulder. Another option would add 2 express lanes. We also have an option to construct collector distributor or CD lanes around the interchanges along 664. There's an option for transportation system management and travel demand management, or TSM TDM improvements. I think it's important as you consider a TSM TDM option to remember this study is confined to the interstate. So there are limited things that can be done with TSM TDM when you're confining yourself just to the interstate. And then finally, an option for transit only improvements. With all of these mainline options, we're also addressing Bowers Hill interchange. For those of you who were with us for the EA study, the options we're looking at are relatively consistent with those, only taking on the consideration of express lanes. So we're looking at a series of new ramps that would run through the interchange, referred to as braided ramps, or an option for full reconstruction of the Bowers Hill interchange. So like I've mentioned a few times now in my presentation, we are at the stage where we're putting these options on the table. It's very important for us to hear from the public and to hear from groups like the HRTPO staff or HRTPO board on what they think of these options. We will continue to discuss these options with the agencies at our monthly meeting with them, and we would look to close out that discussion and seek concurrence from the agencies in May of this year on the range of alternatives that would advance for detailed study. With that concurrence, Federal Highway would be able to issue their notice of intent, as I mentioned before, that would formally begin the EIS study. Under current federal regulations, we have 2 years from notice of intent till receiving a record of decision, which would end the study. So that 2 years is broken up into a couple pieces. For the rest of this calendar year, we would look to analyze the impacts of the retained alternatives, develop cost estimates for those alternatives, and document all that in the NEPA document and supporting technical reports. Very early next calendar year, we would come back to the public, to this board, and to the surrounding localities, and present what we believe is our recommendation for a preferred alternative. We would seek public comment and actions from this board and the localities to endorse or approve that alternative. All that information would be brought before the agencies, where we would seek concurrence on our recommendation. And that recommendation is then taken to the Commonwealth Transportation Board, or CTB, for them to act on the preferred alternative. So we would see all of that happening by spring of next year, at which time Federal Highway would publish the draft EIS for public review. For those of you who've been with us for a number of these different studies, this is a somewhat unique approach to publish the preferred alternative in the draft EIS. And this is being done again to comply with current federal regulations, which call for the Army Corps of Engineers and other federal agencies to issue their permits or approvals as part of the NEPA process. So we need to get that preferred alternative out there early. With the draft EIS issued in the spring of 2022, we would then submit our permit applications in the hopes of Federal Highway publishing a combined final EIS and record of decision by the winter or spring of 2023. We would expect to have federal authorizations that are required at that point as well, and that would complete the study process. So study complete spring of 2023. That concludes my presentation. I thank you all for your time and welcome any questions or comments you might have.
I do have a question. I want to go back to your slide number 8. And ordinarily when I have a transportation question, I'll call Mr. Page, but since we still have you here, I was trying to figure out in the options you laid out, you had, I think, 2 express lanes, 1 express lane and a shoulder, then also collector distributor lane. My initial question was about what the concept is of a collector distributor lane or lanes. But when we're talking about the Hampton Roads express lane network, what are you proposing that is different from what we have in mind already?
It's a good question. For the purposes of NEPA, we do not consider what is proposed on this corridor. So Ms. Stitt's presentation earlier this morning about your upcoming long-range plan, including express lanes along 664. For the federal process, we kind of put our blinders on, if you will, and ignored that step for now. But I would say the option that has one express lane and the drivable shoulder is the option that is consistent with what the Hampton Roads Express Lane Network offers. And stepping out of my area of expertise a bit here, so I would defer to Mr. Hall and the district on any other aspect of that response.
Yeah, Mayor Tuck, this is Chris Hall. Those 2 options, the 2-lane express lane options or managed lane option, and the shoulder lane and the single managed lane option for evaluation are consistent with the HRELN currently. So we wanted to make sure that obviously those options were in for review as we stepped into this portion of the study, and that again, they're consistent with our current plans for the rest of the network.
Okay, so let me just ask, and maybe it's not maybe it's a moot issue. How does the collector distributor lane work? And maybe it's not an option that's on the table for what we're considering, but you have it listed. So I'm just curious to know how it works.
I can take a start at that and defer to others. Again, this is just one of the many options on the table. This is an option that is being implemented on other interstate systems. I'm not familiar with it occurring in Hampton Roads right now. Whereas you would approach an interchange, there would be divided lanes for you to get out of the main line and slow down or speed up to get on and off. Again, this is just an option on the table. It's not meant to imply that it's one that will advance.
So, Mr. Chair, just to give you an example. So an example of a collector distributor in our region would be in the Greenbrier area, and also a small example of that as you're traveling on 264 through this 64 interchange. There are segmented portions of the interstate where you have a portion that is through traffic, and then a portion that would be segmented for entrance and exit on the interchange ramps. So that would be an example of how those work in our region. How they specifically would work in this particular interchange would, to be determined.
Mayor Tuck, if I may. Excuse me, Mayor Tuck, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I was on mute. Sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Yes. So one of the things I wanted to be certain we continue to do is stay connected with the conversations related to the funding and HRTAC. If Mr. Page is still on the line, Kevin, could I ask you if you had any comments you might want to provide?
Sure, and thank you, Director Crum. Obviously, the study to College Drive that Mr. Smizek's done a great job on describing. When I like to say this, when you go into the NEPA evaluation process, although there's a basis of design that's currently being applied, as I think Chair Tuck, you asked the question about, that particular basis of design that we've applied to the Hampton Roads Express Lanes network is included as one of the alternatives that is running through the environmental review process. And so the reason why you find, and I like to explain this in kind of a simplistic manner, because I'm not a practitioner of environmental planning like Mr. Smizek, is you don't want to predetermine an outcome by just saying we're going to do the environmental evaluation of what the HRELN cross-section or road footprint, as I like to say simply, looks like. So you'll find some of the alternatives, as they're called, in the study, but also included in that, as Mr. Hall noted, is the footprint, or shall we say the cross-section as applied on the Hampton Roads Express Lanes network, which, Chair Tuck, you're very familiar with measuring up on what that impact may be in the Hampton area as well as to what that would look like. So it certainly, and I want to thank Mr. Smizek and his team, because there was a very open dialogue with the TPO study group, and thank you, TPO, for having that established on what those cross sections or what those alternatives should look like. And that was obviously through those comments we were able to make sure that one of the alternatives under evaluation was what was the current build scenarios for the Hampton Roads Express Lanes network. So from an HRTAC perspective, we've been very active in the TPO conversations with the steering committee and advisory committee on the Bowers Hill study. And I'm very pleased to say that that dialogue has been carried forward into Mr. Smizek's presentation today.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or just comments, discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
okay, if I may,
Mr. Chairman, if
yes.
I may, And I'll just add on behalf of Mr. Smizik, for the process to be able to move forward within the 2 years that Mr. Smizik identified, and Scott, please disagree if I don't describe this correctly. Not only does Scott have to look at, as Mr. Page just identified, the concept of design that we envision for the express lanes network, but he has to document that each and every design option conceptually was taken a look at. Including, Scott, as you'll agree, the no build, et cetera. If he doesn't look at each and every option, you can get into that spin cycle at the end where he's got to go back of 7 months work and come back through. So I really appreciated Mr. Page's comments to verify that what HRTAC's looking at to plan for finances is in there. And then what Mr. Smizek's got to do is meet the intent of the regulation and make certain all reasonable options are being looked at. So thank you for the chance just to make that comment, Mr. Chairman.
Well, and I appreciate all the clarifications that were made. Any other questions or comments, discussion? Okay. With that, we'll move to item number 8, which is approval of consent items. Mr. Crum, would you please explain those?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, on your consent agenda today, agenda item number 8, we have your pro forma items, which are the minutes from the last meeting and our TPO financial statement. We do have a couple of resolutions for your consideration. One is for us to apply for our federal and state grants that supports our work here at the TPO. We also have an action related to 2020 CMAQ and RSTP selection and allocation of those funds. We have a action asking you to transfer some monies within James City County. That is to keep the Pocahontas Trail multimodal corridor project moving forward in a timely manner. And Mr. Chairman and board members, you also see that we have 3 TIP amendments. Most of those are multi-jurisdictional, and they do in fact deal with Section 3 of the Hampton Roads Express Lanes Network. The other is a TIP amendment for the Hampton Roads Express Lane Toll Integration Systems Integrator, of course, which is being supported by HRTAC. And then finally, authorization for us to do a TIP amendment related to our regional performance measures and targets. Mr. Chairman, we would ask that the board consider approval of the consent agenda today as presented.
And thank you. Let's ask for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
Rick West for approval.
A second, please.
William Harrell, second. Hampton Roads Transit.
Any questions or discussion? Ms. Arledge, would you please do the roll call vote?
Chesapeake, Mayor West.
Yes.
Franklin, Mayor Rabel.
Aye.
Gloucester, Mr. Bazzani.
Yes.
Hampton, Mayor Tuck.
Aye.
Isle of Wight, Mr. McCarty.
Aye.
James City, Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Newport News, Mayor Price.
Aye.
Norfolk, Mayor Alexander. Poquoson, Mayor Helsel. Portsmouth, Mayor Glover.
Aye.
Southampton, Mr. Gillette. Suffolk, Mayor Duman. Mr. Bennett.
Bennett, aye.
Virginia Beach, Mayor Dyer.
Aye.
Williamsburg, Mr. Dent.
Aye.
York, Mr. Shepherd.
Aye.
HRT, Mr. Harrell.
Aye.
WADA, Mr. Trogdon. VDOT, Mr. Hall.
Aye.
DRPT, Ms. DeBrule. Virginia Port Authority, Ms. Vick.
Yes.
Virginia General Assembly, Senator Locke. Senator Spruill. Delegate Heretic. Delegate Ward. That concludes the roll call vote.
Mr. Mahaley, does our motion carry?
Motion carries, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, back to you, sir.
And thank you. Item number 9 is our HRTPO board 3-month tentative schedule. As we stated earlier, there's no regular board meeting scheduled for the month of March, but we are planning a special meeting on March the 29th, and we will solicit you for, I guess, a time that works for all of us. There's an April 15th meeting and then the May meeting. Item number 10 is a correspondence of interest, includes HRTPO board appointment letters. Item 11 is minutes of HRTPO advisory committee meetings. Agenda item number 12 is for your information, which also includes the HR TAC program development monthly executive report. And before I ask if there's any old or new business, I want to ask Director Crum if he has any comments on items 9 through 12.
Sir, no, I believe background information for consideration by board members. So I have nothing to add to that, Mr. Chairman. I would like to report, Mr. Chairman, if I may quickly, you know, it's always interesting to monitor attendance at these virtual meetings. When we started up today, we had 73 people who signed into this particular Zoom call. And I also wanted to report that you had another 21 people who were watching the live stream, which is separate from this. So on a rainy day, hopefully not too much sleep for a number of people, we had almost 100 people engaged in this meeting. So as we continue to work our way through this virtual environment, I just wanted to give you that report, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have, sir.
So the chair got to be embarrassed because he couldn't find the right sign on. That really makes me feel good, Mr. Director. But anyway, that said, we're at the point of old and new business. Is any old business or any new business? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everybody.